In this video, I'm going to give you 3 techniques to create a stronger and more functional core. And as you practice these, you're going to notice it happening at a more subconscious level, and you're going to notice a lot of pain being eliminated. And just as a quick recap, in part 1, we went through the concept of keeping your rib cage stacked over your pelvis. And then in part 2, I walked you through some of the most common causes of your low back pain so that you can be aware of them as they happen throughout the day or when you're in the gym. And once you have that awareness, then you're able to start making these tactical changes that I'm about to show you. So let's dive on into these techniques. The first one I'm going to give you is the most powerful one, and it seems simple, but functional breathing is the way that you create a strong and functional core so that everything works together as one unit and as a symphony, and it reinforces your spine specifically without you needing to think about it. So I'm going to show you a few functional breathing exercises to start off. First one you're going to do is going to be on your back. And what you're going to do is you're going to take little L's, put them around your lowest rib. And when you inhale, you should have an external rotation of your rib cage. And when you exhale, it should be an internal rotation. So you're going to go around the lowest rib. You're going to breathe in through the nose for 4 seconds. And as you're doing that, you're trying to breathe in laterally into your hands. You're also going to breathe into your back. You should also feel a little bit of an expansion. 360 expansion as you're breathing. So inhale for 4 seconds. Then I want you to blow out your lips with pursed lips like you're blowing a whistle. So it's so you breathe in for 4. Exhale for 4. Inhale for 4. And exhale for 4. All right. Now I'm going to give you this in a seated position, and what you're trying to do here is you're trying to teach the deeper core muscles, your transverse abdominis, your internal obliques, to work with your pelvic floor and diaphragm to create tension throughout your entire core. As you breathe in, you create that big spot, that big space of air rather, and as you exhale, you're training everything to tighten. And as that happens, that drives the rib cage down. It's that exhale that drives this down. And so we'll practice from a seated position. So same thing here. Inhale for 4. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now you're not going to see anything flexing necessarily. It's going to feel a lot more like a brace, like if you're doing a plank or if you're doing a hollow hold. But you can really emphasize that exhale. And I'm saying 4 seconds, but go 5, go 6, go 7. Because that's what's going to help you get to that full-on almost failure of those deeper muscles to where they can no longer hold it. You got to take a breath in. Now, if you want to take that to a second level and imagine yourself doing this on the floor, all you're going to do is just lift your heels off. And again, remember what I talked about in part 2, we want a neutral spine. So a slight gap in the lower back. We're not pushing it into the floor. We're not losing that container. We're staying here. You can lift your heels. 4 seconds in. 1, 2, exhale. Right? And now you can also play with different dead bug variations. Inhale. Exhale. Just imagine me going up overhead with my hand. Obviously, I'm running into the wall. But this is one of the biggest concepts where if you can focus on exhaling through the execution, we'll actually get to a few more examples of this later in the video, but exhaling on the execution as you're creating that length, let's say in that leg extension of that dead bug, or as you're extending, you're basically creating a bigger lever, bigger fulcrum rather, at your core. And as you exhale, that reinforces that space. And it's in that hinge, it's in that squat, where if you can keep that space reinforced through your breath, that's where you're gonna be able to create the most stability. So now the second technique that you're gonna wanna utilize is breathing to create a proper brace. And yes, I put up some Star Wars Mandalorian decals in between videos because I had them laying around. I wanted to make sure that I got them up. So first one you're gonna wanna do is specifically gonna be what's called the Valsalva maneuver. So when you go into a squat, for example, you're gonna take a big breath in. And again, think about the rib cage staying stacked over the pelvis as you're doing this. So big breath in, and then go through the entire movement And obviously, I'm breathing as I do this, but go through the entire movement with that big air, that big gulp in your core, because that's what's creating intra-abdominal pressure. Think about a Pepsi can. If I had a Pepsi can and it was filled, it was vacuum sealed, that thing's pretty solid, but as soon as you let that air out, you can bend it in half, you can break it. So if I go into that squat, all the way down, all the way back up, it's going to feel like you have tension in your face, but what should it feel like in your core? If I was gonna punch you, right, how would you brace for that? That's essentially what you wanna do. It's not about sucking it in and hollowing it in and creating a narrower core. If you take in a bunch of air, it should feel like a big, bulky cylinder that is essentially your core. The next one that I actually really like, because it's a little bit more tangible and easier to cue, is what I call the leaky tire. Really common one in the fitness space. So you're gonna come into your exercise, take a breath in, so as that's happening, you're maintaining the tension of all those muscles, pelvic floor, diaphragm, obliques, transverse abdominis, everything's working together to create that tension in the core. As soon as you inhale, you're gonna lose that tension. Think about flexing your bicep is creating that tension. As soon as you inhale, you release that tension. So those two breathing techniques are gonna help you create the tension, reinforce your spine as you go to execute that lift. Same thing here. If I'm doing an RDL, I wanna make sure, take a big breath in, brace in the spine, come back up, or I wanna do a leaky tire, breath in, regardless of what big compound lift you're doing, you wanna create as much stability in your spine. You wanna do that with your breath after you've reinforced that rib cage over the pelvis position. That rib cage pelvic alignment needs to happen. Otherwise, even if you do take that big breath in, you haven't created the foundational structural stability that you need. Close that, create that container, then fill that container up with air. Now this next technique is one that I actually picked up from yoga, because what I found in yoga classes is that they cued it wrong as it related to lifting. In yoga, they'll do a lot of inhale, arm overhead. What does that perpetuate? Inhale, chest flares, rib cage flares, losing that core integrity. So what I would cue when I was a yoga teacher is if I had someone in a position, I would say exhale on the execution. So if I'm here and I'm pressing overhead, I don't want to inhale. Inhale is going to bring the rib cage up. I want to exhale on the execution. And think about the execution as where the load is essentially the greatest, or where you are going from standstill, no force, to producing force. So if I'm here and I'm doing a row, I might inhale, exhale, inhale, reach, exhale, right? Could be a bench press, could be a leg press, could be whatever it is you're doing. But when you are producing force is when the most amount of force is going to be produced or placed on your spine. So you want to exhale into that. I'm good right here to inhale. The further that weight gets away from my body, the more my core needs to stabilize and reinforce my spine. So to recap, I would utilize the functional breathing exercises at the beginning of your workouts so that you can train a stable core, so that you can train good posture, good positioning. It's also just a really good way to warm up your core going into these big compound lifts. From there, you're gonna wanna make sure that you are utilizing those breathing techniques, either the big brace, or you're gonna wanna go with that leaky tire. That way you create as much intra-abdominal pressure as possible. Last but not least, think about exhaling on the execution of some of those single arm movements or anything where you really need to make sure that your core is reinforced and stabilized. Could be a dead bug, could be an overhead press, could be a row, whatever it is, use your breath. Your breath and functional breathing is the best way to strengthen and create a strong, stable core. Thanks for watching. If you got value out of this video or part 1 or part 2 as it relates to eliminating or fixing your low back pain and tightness, I appreciate it if you'd hit that like and subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below. More than happy to chat with you there. My name is Paul Klingen. I'll catch you in the next Return of the Athlete video.